When you're looking for a solicitor to deal with your case, you don't just look for any solicitor, you look for the right solicitor. An expert who knows what he's doing can deal with your case the right way, achieving the best results. OBASEKI Solicitors has more than 100 years of specialist experience serving the local community in immigration law, property law, human rights legislation, civil and criminal litigation, family law, employment law, Sharia law, business law, maritime and commercial law, providing professional legal services globally in Africa, Asia and Europe. Be assured we'll be able to deal with your case the absolute right way with results. So, contact us today by phone on 020-7739-7549 or go online at www.legalpal.com.
Good evening. Welcome once again to Truth and Justice TV. Thanks for joining me. And what a week it's been. Yes, the vote has been delayed yet again. Poor Miss May. I do feel for her, and I say that with respect because she's been through the trenches, hasn't she? And lots of MPs defecting. Oh my goodness. Are we going to have a new major political party? We've got to keep our eyes focused, but do they have the right mandate, though, since some of them came in under the Labour banner and they haven't really established what they stand for quite clearly at all? Well, it's going to be interesting times. And we've seen our jihadi bride go from being British to being what seems to be stateless now. The Home Secretary said that she has another nationality, whereas the other country says, hold on a minute, she's not a citizen here. So she's gone from being British to stateless. And that kind of leans on what we're going to be talking about this week. Right now, with the cuts in legal aid, we are seeing so many people coming before the justice system, either with limited representation or in a situation where they're not happy with their representation, but because of the cuts, can't easily switch lawyers. And some people actually do not qualify for legal aid, even though they've been accused of a criminal offence. And then on the other side of that coin, many victims of crime find themselves without any kind of compensation or support. So what do you do if you're a victim of crime? And what compensation can you actually get? And if you're accused of crime, can you get legal aid? Or what can you expect from private representation? Even if you've been sentenced, can you get help doing a private appeal? We'll be answering those questions this evening. My name's Jennifer OBASEKI, and I have a very wonderful guest with me. She's an expert with more than 10 years working with the Crown Prosecution Service, and she knows a lot about criminal offences, the whole trajectory of a case moving through the criminal justice system, and what victims should expect. Her name is Victoria Salami. Good evening, Victoria.
Good evening, Jennifer.
Thank you for coming to Truth and Justice TV.
Pleasure.
Now, I've given a bit of a synopsis about yourself, but can you tell people more about your experience in dealing with criminal cases?
I spent roughly about 10 years as an associate, essentially prosecuting within the Crown Prosecution Service, dealing with various types of cases from your very serious matters up to cases that eventually found themselves in the Crown Court. So I dealt with minor offences as well, but the majority of the time it was a lot of domestic violence matters, fraud matters, as well as I would say other dishonesty type offences that I was dealing with. I also dealt with your fair share of paedophile cases as well. So my experience is quite varied in terms of dealing with victims across the board. I believe I dealt more so with a lot of domestic violence victims purely because in the department that I was working at, we had a specialist team that were dealing with victims of domestic violence. We call them DV cases. Yeah.
Okay. So can you see the changes that have happened within the criminal justice system? A lot of people get a bit surprised when they are being, let's say, they're not comfortable with the representation they get. Number one, it's a means and merits test for legal aid. People don't realise just because you've been accused of an offence doesn't mean you automatically get legal aid. Your income is looked at, and sadly, because of the nature of the way prosecutions are run now, sometimes the seriousness of the offence is also looked at. So some solicitors may feel, okay, you're saying you're innocent, but the evidence is stacked against you. There is not going to be that much funding under the legal aid certificate to explore all of your avenues that you want me to go and look at the site. You want me to interview this person and that person, whereas there's all these statements against you. So sometimes the reports I'm getting from people out there is that they're often put under pressure to plead guilty. And that is quite a sad situation. If somebody finds themselves in that situation, are there any few words of advice you can actually give them?
Well, at the end of the day, one of the first things that I would say is if you feel that you haven't committed a crime, never plead guilty. Don't put yourself in a position where you are feeling pressured to enter into a guilty plea, just because although there may be opportunities in order to remedy that, and I make reference to appeals, unfortunately we do find ourselves in an era where a lot of people have come to us and have said that they've had to enter into a guilty plea for whatsoever reason.
Some people under pressure, solicitor saying it, barrister saying
exactly.
Plead.
So under pressure, and not only under pressure, just because sometimes they just want to get it over and done with. Sometimes it's just the stress of it all. And if you have ended up in a position where you have entered a guilty plea, you should know that there is an opportunity for you to appeal that guilty plea, and what we can do as a firm, the firm that I'm with at the moment, OBASEKI Solicitors, is we deal with defendants who have been sentenced already, and they turn around and say, look, this shouldn't have happened. We are a firm that are able to deal with such matters.
Right. It's in dealing with the more minor offences, people often think, oh, it's not that serious, I'll go do it myself, I'll represent myself. Can you tell people the dangers of representing yourself? Especially when you think it's not so serious. You go and speak to one friend who used to do law, or one person who's a busy lawyer says, oh, well, you know, is it that easy just to take snippets and then go and suddenly represent yourself in magistrate's court?
Well, from where I'm standing now, being a legal professional, I can say I would always advise, if you can't get legal representation, by all means get yourself legally represented. And I'll give you some reasons why. Firstly, people who are lawyers and professionals, legal professionals, they have the experience in specific fields. So you might, meet a friend who maybe has specialized in immigration law and turns around and tries to give you advice in respect of criminal law. Don't take it. Always seek specialist advice. Secondly, when you enter into court, I find that a lot of defendants, once they are in court, they feel stressed. They feel pressurized even by just simple proceedings, just because they're not used to being in that environment. And for that reason, if you have if you are legally represented, they can obviously make sure that your story or whatever mitigation you wish to make in respect of the offence that you have committed is obviously that story is given in true light to the judge. It's very unfortunate that we live in a society sometimes where people feel they can go on the internet and just get information from the internet and then feel that they're comfortable enough to go into court. I can give a classic example that's actually happened before, where I had someone say to me, you know, had I known what I know now, I would have come to your firm for legal representation, because they ended up getting a very, very severe, you know, severe penalty from the court. So unfortunately, you know, obviously we had to deal with the post-conviction side of things. But fact of the matter is, when you do enter into court, you know, you don't know what is going to happen in terms of how you are going to feel when you get into court. And sometimes you're not able to give your side of the story the way you should.
Right. It is all about crime, and if you've been accused of a crime or if you're the victim of a crime. Another thing that you might want to say, talk about, is the penalty. If you find yourself with a staggering fine and you're not sure what to do, are there any representations you can make?
Yes, by all means. Something that our firm does, obviously, is to look at the level of sentencing. You can actually, you know, if you feel that you have been dealt with, you know, sometimes some people come to me and say to me, well, I thought I was just going to get, you know, 3 or 6 points, and now I've been disqualified. And it's because they've gone into court, they haven't got a clue what the sentencing powers are in relation to that specific offence. And what our firm would do in situations like that, there is an opportunity for you to appeal, and we do deal with post convictions where a defendant believes that they may have been dealt with unfairly by the courts.
All right, now, when it comes down to those people who are not eligible for legal aid, though lots of things are dealt with at the magistrates' courts, there are additional, more serious cases that are committed to the Crown Court for trial. And in those situations, what would a person be expected to really cover? If you don't get legal aid, there may be the need for not just your legal team, but other expenses such as experts and things like that. If a client comes to you and says, look, well, I'm not sure, does each case turn on its facts?
I would say yes. I mean, each case does turn on its facts, but like I said, it's very important to make sure that you've got a legal representative who, I would say, specialises in that particular field. I think that is very helpful. And not just that, there are other ways that you can be dealt with. I know that at our firm we have conditional fee agreements, and how that's basically a no win, no fee arrangement, where we would represent you and you won't pay anything until the case is won. And when the case is won, the firm takes a particular percentage. And the good thing about, we call this a CFA, obviously, a conditional fee agreement, is that there's no pressure on you financially in order to put any legal fees down. It's purely dealt with on the basis that the matter is won. So we do all the work in respect of a case. And unfortunately, this is something that is not common knowledge. A lot of the time when people hear about conditional fee agreements, they start talking about insurance claims. They don't really think about, you know, criminal matters that can be dealt with on a CFA basis. A CFA obviously opens up the opportunity of you not having any pressure of obviously having to pay up front. And I always say, in respect of our firm, if you do have a matter that you feel, okay, I don't believe that I'm going to legally be able to afford this, then it's always best that you do ask our firm in particular as to whether or not during the consultation it is something that we can cover under a no-win, no-fee basis.
Right. Now, with the criminal cases, the good thing is, if we feel that there's sufficient merit in your case, we will run the case, and at the end of the day, we can claim our funds from what's called the Central Taxation Unit. So where we do feel that there's a very high chance of you succeeding, and you can prove to us that you are vulnerable, you have a very low income, then we've been successful in sort of representing people in that manner. So many people who have professions that are sensitive. So if you're nursing or you're in the legal profession and there are issues, you know, maybe you've been accused of something, assault or any kind of criminal offence, and you cannot have a conviction on your record. Maybe you work in care or in the security industry and you're not confident or you're not eligible for legal aid, then you can come to us because we have a long-standing and good experience in dealing with private criminal defence. So feel free to come to us. We're going to take a very short break. And after the break, we're going to really discuss victims. If you've been a victim of a crime, what are you entitled to? The police are under a lot of pressure, and we again get reports from people who are not happy, one, with how they've been treated by the police, sometimes the lack of communication, sometimes cases even being dropped despite extensive evidence, and also compensation. So we'll see you after this very short break.
When you're looking for a solicitor to deal with your case, you don't just look for any solicitor, you look for the right solicitor. An expert who knows what he's doing can deal with your case the right way, achieving the best results. OBASEKI Solicitors has more than 100 years of specialist experience serving the local community in immigration law, property law, human rights legislation, civil and criminal litigation, family law, employment law, Sharia law, business law, maritime and commercial law, providing professional legal services globally in Africa, Asia and Europe. Be assured we'll be able to deal with your case the absolute right way with results. So, contact us today by phone on 020-7739-7549 or go online at www.legalpal.com.
Welcome back, and we're talking this week on Truth and Justice TV about crime, whether you've been accused or if you're the victim. Now, many times offences are committed, as we talked about, sometimes unwittingly. You might innocently fall into the fact that you've been charged with an offence. It might be a strict liability offence, so something that even has no defence to it. You might get on a bus, have a dizzy spell, before you know it, an inspector's on the bus and saying, "Where's your ticket?" You've not tapped in. There you go. That happened to one of my clients a long time ago. And it actually did come on her record when she was applying for her naturalisation, and she was an American citizen. But we had to explain it, and luckily enough, she got no real adverse inference drawn from it. But criminal offence is another one that we have to be careful of, especially in relation to our youngsters, is this issue of joint enterprise. Your friends may be inclined to go and commit an offence and say, "Let's go down the road." And when you get down the road, they've actually decided to do something, either attack somebody, rob somebody, or do something, God forbid, even worse. And you that tagged along, even though you didn't know their intention, may still be arrested and charged with the offence that ends up being committed. You have to be careful about your associations, and you have to be careful about your actions. If you find yourself charged with a criminal offence, then please do seek out experienced legal representation to make sure that you are well defended. And moving on from that, we're going to talk about victims of crime. Now, within the United Kingdom, there is a criminal injuries compensation scheme that is offered to victims of crime. But what we're finding, as I said before the break, is people are left with such little information. Something happens, awful, maybe you're burgled, maybe you get assaulted, sadly, report to the police, and due to lack of resources, you're not followed up properly, officers don't call you, the officer in the case, you might not even know their name, that's supposed to contact you, etc., etc. So, Ms. Salami, please tell us, what is a victim supposed to expect? What kind of minimum treatment should they expect from the police?
Well, as you know, when a victim suffers physical injuries or a crime is committed and there is a victim, you have the Crown Prosecution Service who eventually take this matter to court. And sometimes it's taken to court, perhaps to whether or not that matter goes to trial. That's another story. So, yes, so it's taken to court. So you have victims we have different victims that come our way. We have victims who come our way where the case goes through the Crown Prosecution Service, and for some reason, due to evidence or whatsoever reason, it doesn't end up having a hearing. So there's no trial, and they're eventually left there and told that due to insufficient evidence, the matter cannot proceed to trial. They are still a victim. So you got one victim in respect of that kind of scenario. And you have other victims where the matter actually does go to trial and they're given just a little bit of compensation. Essentially, the main redress for them is the fact that the attackers have been brought to justice. Now, the criminal injuries compensation scheme that Jennifer's just spoken about is actually a scheme that is run by the Criminal Injuries Compensation Authority, which is an executive agency of the UK government. And what they do is they compensate victims of violent crime. So if you have suffered a physical injury, this executive agency of the government will compensate you financially. And I would say this from the outset, there's a lot of people that use Google and are willing to go online to find out some information about this agency. And it does say, there's a form online that you can fill out. My advice will be that you do seek legal representation. You seek professional help in order to apply for compensation from this authority. And the main reason for that is in order to maximize the amount of compensation that you will be receiving. Yes, it's a form online, but when you do go online and find out the detail that's required, I would say that a legal professional who specializes in this sort of applications, I actually do this on behalf of OBASEKI, on behalf of clients. I can confirm to you that, we always do it in a way where our clients always get the maximum compensation that they are entitled to. I have found certain victims have come my way to say, can we apply again? The first time when we applied, we didn't provide all the required documentation. And unfortunately, it's not somewhere that you can go to twice. But the good thing about it is that when we deal with these applications, it's on a CFA basis, which is a conditional fee agreement basis, where it's on a no-win, no-fee basis for the firm. So which means you don't pay anything, and we literally deal with the matter for you. And then when you are compensated, it's only then that you have to pay legal fees from the monies that you will get via compensation.
Now, it's difficult because at times you can also try to get compensation from the person who's actually committed the crime against you, but sometimes that person might not have funds, and that's why this scheme is set up by the government. Other things that you mentioned there, you said that sometimes a case might not go to trial. What can somebody do if the CPS or the police decide not to continue with an investigation or refer something for prosecution?
You need to obviously go to a solicitor's firm and speak to them. It's a matter that can be dealt with by a solicitor, where they can make representations to the Crown Prosecution Service to find out why the matter hasn't been dealt with, and to actually make representations for it to be reinstituted. Unfortunately, a lot of victims, they don't know about this, where, you know, a case is dropped and just like, oh my gosh, the case is dropped, I've got a letter from the CPS, and that's it, the matter's done. No, the matter is not done. You can seek legal advice. My clients who do come to me in respect of cases like this, what we do is obviously make representations to the Crown Prosecution Service in order to see whether or not this matter, the case can be reinstituted. And I can say that we have been successful in dealing with such cases.
It's quite painful, you know somebody's done something, the police know that you've been attacked or something's happened to you, but then they just don't seem to take up. Do you think is it an administrative decision, or is it a combination of factors that might lead to the police deciding to not fully provide all the necessary evidence to the CPS to prosecute?
Well, I think it's on an individual basis, so I'm not going to speak across the board. I know that there's a lot of policies that have been put in place just to make sure that the police do work efficiently with the Crown Prosecution Service, but unfortunately things like this, they do happen.
Yeah.
And when they do, victims need to know that in a situation, for instance, where they feel, you know, the police have been negligent, they need to understand that there is opportunities for them to bring civil action against the police. I don't know whether that's something that you wanted to
So we're going to
touch on. Yes.
we will talk about that actually. So police, bringing a claim against the police, what does that entail? We've had clients come to us and either they've been victims of let's say excessive force by the police officers, either during searches, interrogations and arrests and other incidents. But when people feel that the police have not acted appropriately, what steps can they take?
Well, I think the first thing that I want to say to you is, if you have been dealt with by any authority, including the police, and feel that they have done something wrong, and I'm just going to use the words wrong to generalize first, don't feel that any authority is too big for you to bring action against. I'm just going to say that firstly, because I think that that is something that a lot of people need to overcome, that, you know, the police can get it wrong, authorities can get it wrong, and when they do, you can seek legal advice. I have clients who have come to me who have expressed that, you know, they've been dealt with in a certain way by the police that they feel is wrong. They feel that, and there's different reasons. So just to give you classic examples, you have, you know, false imprisonment. You have where you feel that the police have been negligent in that maybe they haven't dealt with a case the way that you feel they should have dealt with. There's cases where people say that the police have abused their powers. We've had cases where clients have stated they were arrested and that during arrest, you know, they were mishandled and they suffered injuries. We've had cases where clients have said upon arrest they've been assaulted by the police. And there's all different types of situations. There's even situations where people have stated that, you know, the police have been abusive to them. Fact of the matter is, yes, they are part of the Metropolitan Police, which is a big authority,
force,
big force. But fact of the matter is, they are still human, and if they act outside their powers or they are negligent, we can bring
and will.
Civil, yes, and will, and we'll bring civil action against them in order to make sure that you get compensation and that the matter's dealt with. And I'd like to make a quick distinction here. We have, you know, obviously clients who come to us and say that, yes, should I just make a complaint to the police? There is a distinction, a difference between making a complaint to the police force. When you make a complaint to the police force, it is a complaint that is dealt with internally, and so you are not given compensation for making a complaint to the police. If you bring civil action against the police, that means you're actually taking the police or whatever authority it is to court, and essentially you will get compensation, and the matter will have to be looked at again, and they would have to obviously identify how they can remedy you. So it's not just compensation, it's them actually looking back and saying, okay, now this client has brought civil action against the police and has been successful. How was the initial matter dealt with, and how can we address that to their satisfaction?
Yeah. So we've also had people who've lost property within police stations. If things get booked in and then suddenly disappear, or people get things taken from them during the course of an investigation and then not returned. Is there a claim that people can bring for the return of property?
Yes, of course. Yes, there is a claim. So once again, via civil action, we can obviously address that. And there's so many different instances, but just the go-to is that if you are dealing with the police or any authority and you feel that they have worked outside their powers, do not just take it for the fact that, yes, they're police, they know what to do. I know we put our trust and we have confidence in our police force to a certain degree and extent to believe that they always deal with us in the way that they should deal with us. But the fact of the matter is there have been instances where they have acted outside their powers.
Yeah.
And for that reason, if you are not happy, I would always say book an appointment with a legal professional just to find out whether or not, they have actually acted within their powers, and to see whether or not they have been negligent, because it does unfortunately happen all the time.
It happens quite a lot in our community, and with the increased need to use stop and search powers due to the increased levels of gun and knife crime, sometimes tensions can be strained, there can be stress, and mistakes can be made. So no authority is too big. Do not be intimidated at all. So if you feel that you've been treated wrongly or unfairly, or there's been an abuse of power, definitely make an appointment to see Ms. Salami, and you will have expert advice given to you. We're going to take another short break, and on the other side we will try and take your phone calls and also really cover some of the instances that we've already had experience dealing with, so that you can see that if you do feel as a victim not supported, or as somebody who's been accused of crime and not feeling comfortable with the advice given, that you're not alone. See you after this short break.
When you're looking for a solicitor to deal with your case, you don't just look for any solicitor, you look for the right solicitor. An expert who knows what he's doing can deal with your case the right way, achieving the best results. OBASEKI Solicitors has more than 100 years of specialist experience serving the local community in immigration law, property law, human rights legislation, civil and criminal litigation, family law, employment law, Sharia law, business law, maritime and commercial law, providing professional legal services globally in Africa, Asia and Europe. Be assured we'll be able to deal with your case the absolute right way with results. So, contact us today by phone on 020-7739-7549 or go online at www.legalpal.com.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. And we're talking crime today, whether you're a victim of crime, and even if you've been accused of committing crime, what to do, how we can help you. Now, the police are having to use ever-increasing tactics to try and curb what has been a rise in violent crime, especially in inner cities. And one of those things that they have leaned on is the use of taser guns. Did you know that there is actually requirements as to how these things are deployed? So the increased using taser guns by officers, some may see it as completely justified, but if somebody is having a fit or somebody's having an argument and it's deployed, is it just automatically right for an officer to pull out a taser gun?
No, not at all. It's actually a test, and a test relates to a level of seriousness as to when they can actually deploy a taser gun. Once again, we find ourselves in a situation where, taser guns are deployed, and our youth have heard so many times that they're deployed, and so they don't ever question whether or not the officer's
right or wrong.
acting within their powers, or whether or not the test has been met for that taser gun to be deployed. Once again, I would always seek the advice of a legal professional, and we have clients that come our way who state, a taser gun was deployed. Should it have been deployed? And when we do look at the case in its entirety, the seriousness test, the test has not been met. And so therefore they've abused their powers, because they should not have used the taser gun in that particular instance.
It's very concerning because a lot of young children have had taser guns deployed on them. Now you can understand if an officer needs to use a taser gun to protect themselves or members of the public from receiving further harm or being at risk of harm. But if a taser gun is just being used as a form of intimidation, that is completely wrong. And some research that came out, I think last week, actually showed that where an officer deploys a taser gun, they're more likely to be attacked, because the natural reaction from a person who is having a taser gun or any weapon put in their face is to defend themselves. So funny enough, the statistics actually show that officers more likely to be attacked if they use or deploy a taser gun, which I found quite shocking. But then again, when you think about it, one's natural reaction when a weapon is put in front of them is to try and defend themselves. So that is probably a reason why the statistics are the way they are. Now, looking at, again, our young people, it is quite important that you realise that compliance and cooperation with the police is essential. If you know that you are innocent of committing a particular crime and an officer stops and searches you and gives their valid reasons, or you're living in an area where special powers have been deployed, for example, I know in Hackney and Islington of recent, the mayors are given special powers to police to enhance their grounds for stop and searching young people, and that's been because of either murders in the area, knife crime in the area, or prevalence of intelligence that says something's going to happen in the area. So they're trying to curb and curtail crime. But ordinarily, there has to be a good reason for an officer to stop and search a person. It's not a case that they can just roam free and stop people without just cause or suspicion. An officer can automatically stop you to try and identify who you are. That doesn't always necessarily need a suspicion of a crime. The officers do have the power, and this is where police officers sometimes go in, act, and actually do, let's say, enforcement with immigration. Sometimes we see that in certain areas they're carrying out joint operations. That's the word I was looking for. Joint operations. So there's task force that are going out into certain areas asking for people to identify themselves. And sometimes you've seen this at train stations, bus stops. And so, again, a level of cooperation has to be there. If an officer asks you to identify yourself, if you refuse to identify yourself, then you might be seen as suspect, and therefore seen as uncooperative, and therefore that leads to further questions, etc., etc. But if you do feel that an officer, a police officer, is overstepping their powers, being abusive, being unnecessarily aggressive, then you can do one or two things. The first thing I would suggest somebody to do is take the person's shoulder number. They should have a shoulder number displayed. If they're not displaying a shoulder number, maybe they're in plain uniform, then again, what you can ask is for their superintendent's name and for them to identify who they are so that you can keep a record as to what's happening. What other advice can you give to somebody who feels like, look, they're in a situation with a police officer or somebody in authority that's saying that they have the power to do something, but they feel very uncomfortable with it. The person is being aggressive, overstepping what seems to be their authority. What steps can the person take?
Well, first I'll say is cooperate as much as you can. The moment that you have an opportunity to write down the incident, as in whatever has happened, you need to sit down and write down everything that has happened. That's the first thing I would say. Secondly, make sure you take any pictures. So I've had a client who was stopped for doing something very simple, and before he knew it, you know, they placed handcuffs on him, and when they placed the handcuffs on him, they caused injuries to his wrist, only for him to get back to the police station, and he was subsequently released. And he was not happy with the fact that he had sustained an injury from the handcuffs. And luckily, we were in a position where he was a quick thinker. He wrote down everything that happened, the time, the shoulder number of the officer, any names that he could remember, the time, the day, and also what he was doing at the time, you know, the location, everything else, as well as whether or not there were any witnesses. He also took pictures on his mobile phone. Your mobile phone is very handy. Make use of it. You know, he took pictures. Yes, he took pictures of the injuries to his wrists, which was timed and dated, which obviously assisted when he had to make an application in respect of, you know, the injuries that he sustained. And eventually, you know, he brought a claim, a civil claim against the police. Once again, it was dealt with on a CFA basis, so we didn't have to pay anything, and was on a no-win, no-fee basis. So what I would advise is that you record as much information as you can. Do not argue with them. Keep calm, because I find a lot of our youth, the reason why they get not only intimidated but violent when they believe that an officer is acting outside their powers is because they believe that if they don't do something about it right there and there isn't a way that they can address the situation. And that's what we're saying, that you can bring civil action against the police. Yes, if they've done something wrong, let them do whatever they're doing. Let them do the wrong they're doing. Just make sure that you take down the full details and contact a solicitor, legal professional, as soon as possible with full details for them to pursue a case against the officer.
Thank you. Now, if you do find yourself in this position, as we've said, try to get the names of the officers that you have around you. Look at their shoulder numbers. If they do not have shoulder numbers, they're in plain clothes, ask for their name and rank. Ask for their name and rank and try to remember it. If you are removed from where the scene that you are picked up, if you're taken off the street or out of a car, outline the concerns you may have for your vehicle or any other passengers that might be left in the car. Very, very important. The other thing that you can also do is when you get to the station, ask for notes to be made on the custody record of your concerns, whether it's I've expressed that this officer hasn't given me a caution, or this officer has injured me, or this officer I need to have be seen by a doctor. I want to see a doctor as soon as possible. If you do get to see a doctor, ask the doctor to document your injuries. That's another thing that you have to ask a doctor to do if you're seen in the police station. Again, if you feel that you're vulnerable, you can actually say to the officers, I feel vulnerable, I'm not well, can you check on me every 30 minutes and note my custody record? There's certain things that you can do. Again, if you're a mum who's stressed or you're a dad who's stressed and you were taken and you're so emotive because it's so wrong, again, you can be charged. The fact is you've got to try and remain calm. As mad as it sounds, yes, you do have to try and remain just a little bit calm. Okay? So whatever your situation, remember that there's no power that is above the law. There is no authority which is above the law, whether it's the Home Office, the police force, the passport office even, all have to abide by the rules and regulations that are set in the United Kingdom. And the good thing is we're in a system and that we're in a country that has a legal system that can bring public bodies to account. So it's very important that you, as best as possible, can document what's happened to you and seek out experienced legal advice as soon as possible. Miss Salami, thank you. Mrs. Salami, thank you for joining us. You must come back and we talk all things crime once again. If people want to get hold of you, how can they get hold of you?
I'm at OBASEKI Solicitors, so you can essentially call them and ask for Victoria Salami. I'm the main person, the main go-to legal professional who deals with civil actions against police and other authorities, and I'll be happy to assist you.
And if they want to email you, can they email you?
Yes, they can. Or, you can send me an email, and that's to victorias@obaseki.solicitors with an s.com. I'll repeat that. That's victorias@obaseki.solicitors.com.
Thank you once again.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful to have you once again with us. And again, we would love to see you again next week. So have a wonderful week. And remember to be good. And if you cannot be good, be careful. See you next week.
When you're looking for a solicitor to deal with your case, you don't just look for any solicitor. You look for the right solicitor. An expert who knows what he's doing can deal with your case the right way, achieving the best results. OBASEKI Solicitors has more than 100 years of specialist experience serving the local community in immigration law, property law, human rights legislation, civil and criminal litigation, family law, employment law, Sharia law, business law, maritime and commercial law, providing professional legal services globally in Africa, Asia and Europe. Be assured we'll be able to deal with your case the absolute right way with results. So contact us today by phone on 020-7739-7549 or go online at www.legalpower.com.